Artie in the chat just asked, so building a discovery tree is a mob activity and a living one?
Yeah,
Very
it
much so.
changes. I would agree with that. It changes every day, every second, every, minute. If we find new work or we discover new work or we complete work, we try to update it and keep it kind of visually up to date as much as possible to kind of communicate that progress with the team and the other mobs.
It also helps us remember what we've done and what's coming up. I mean, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. When you get into your 50s, you start to forget things from the day before sometimes, or rather you get good at letting things go. And so it's like, wait, what were we doing yesterday? The decision tree. Oh yeah. Okay. Got it.
I'm in my 30s and I'm already forgetting what I did yesterday.
I'm in my 50s, but I feel like I'm in my 30s and I still forget things. So, it's just.
Well, yeah. I mean, I totally 100% what Josh said. Right.
Now, question, and I think, Brett, you answered this, is it just a developer thing or do you interact with anyone else?
So we use the same kind of thing early in the process. So we have line items, and a line item is a big thing. It's going to be a lot of work. It's probably going to be a lot of work. It's not going to be a day. It's going to be weeks maybe of work. And so we start to break that down. We try to figure out what are the different characteristics of the thing. And when we do that, we've got the three amigos, right? We've got development, product, and QA in those meetings. So we have our customer and we have ourselves, and who's actually in there does vary a little bit depending on the area. But for the most part, yeah, it's the three amigos. And also when we're working through things, we'll often bring people in to look at the work before it's done because we want to get feedback on it. And so the discovery trees also will involve QA there, and sometimes product. Less so because the discovery trees for implementing the work we're doing now are at a finer level of detail than the discovery trees we're doing earlier in the process. Earlier in the process, it's like, what are the major moving parts? And now it's like, okay, how do we implement this moving part? And so different levels of granularity. But yeah, it's a fairly expressive thing that scales up or down. But I wouldn't try to start with a discovery tree on a line item and maintain a discovery tree all the way down to implementing it, because that's just, they're different things for different conversations. I wouldn't try to put them together myself.
Yeah, for this context, so maybe to explain the slide a little bit and kind of talking about the context that Brett's talking about, we really do it at like a story level. So if we look at this slide here, API caller saves data. Now that's not the most user-focused story, but let's just say it's something like that. We then break the story down. We have a key of some sort where we show things that have been worked on or are done, things that are being worked on, and things that are still left to do. And we build on this thing as we go. Sometimes we delete things. Sometimes we add things at the last second. Sometimes we build a lot up front. It kind of depends.
Sometimes we break stuff off because we realize it's a whole different story.
Mm-hmm. And just maybe for some deeper conversations with this too, or deeper learnings with this, there's a great blog post that we actually ripped this slide from called Working with Discovery Trees by Steve Kuo. It is on the Industrial Logics blog site. I'll link it in the chat here in a bit. Definitely go check that out.
The thing that I really love about this is it's making the work visible. So as the work grows, it's obvious where and why it's growing. So like oftentimes I've seen when people use some of the larger tools to track stories and there's not the relationship between them, you can't see all of a sudden, a project manager comes in or whatever and is like, where did all these stories come from? Why did they get created? Well, this makes it more obvious, and you can see which portions of the implementation were more difficult and larger because that part of the tree just gets big, and which things were easier. And it really is I think there was a question about, do you use it with other parts of the organization? For us in the startup, we all have to be on the same page, and the people, the project manager wants to know how the team's doing. So we use this as a representation, and he can come and look at it at any point during the day to see what the team's working on. He doesn't have to come and ask status. He just looks at the board and sees, and you can get maybe a quick high level view of like, oh, I can quickly see 50% of the cards are blue. So maybe 50% is done because I know that more will be created. Maybe some will be deleted, but it kind of gives you a quick visual sense of how far that piece of work is along. And so it's a great information radiator to other parts of the organization.
Awesome. So with that, what else does a normal day look like? So you've talked about kind of the start of the day. You get together, talk about what you're going to work on. You've kind of talked about that, we usually work in mobs. And then from that, we kind of break the work down into discovery trees. What does the actual working process look like then? Say you're working on your discovery tree, and you're actually sitting down and writing code. Can someone share maybe what that looks like from our perspective?
I'll start real quick. So first thing is we probably are in Zoom already. We have a bunch of breakout rooms that have names. Sometimes the names are actually relevant to the work, and sometimes they're fun, but whatever. And then like Jessica and I decide we're going to go work on blah. We go work on blah. So the first thing we do is we typically, because if we've just switched to another one, honestly, we're probably just finished up something. And so we'll probably say, let's take a quick break, because one of the things we're bad about is not taking breaks. And I cannot emphasize this. Mobbing is wonderful. It's exhausting. You need to take breaks. And if you don't take breaks, your brain gets messed up and then you stop mobbing well. I mean, that's just, you need to take breaks. And once an hour is good, but we take a quick break. We come back, pull from Git, because I don't want to have to start making changes on old code. And then someone starts working on something. We go to the decision tree. What's next? Sometimes we'll do some probing. It's we're not exactly, what we're working on is complicated, and the actual underlying data is complicated. There's long connections. And so sometimes we'll do a quick probe. If I do this, does this basically do what I think it's going to do? Great. Okay, that we got an idea. Git checkout, reset. Now let's go write a test. So we go test first. We do some discovery on how the code works, and then we write tests to capture our understanding, and we go back and implement. Sometimes we go straight up test first because it's fairly straightforward, but we try to switch often. 5 minutes is good. 10 minutes is okay. Much more than 10 minutes, we do it, but we always feel it. So we try to get to green. Sometimes we'll use handoff branches to hand off rather than waiting for somebody, waiting to get back to green. A lot of times we'll just do parallel development, but we try to take small steps and try to figure out ways to get back to trunk as often as possible, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I believe in the hidden cost of integration is at least an order of magnitude worse, more than that, but at least an order of magnitude worse than waiting for integration. The longer you wait for integration, it gets exponentially worse in terms of quality going down, defects going up, et cetera, et cetera. So we believe in fast feedback.